Namaste. Dandavat Pranam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Canto 1 Creation, Chapter 13, Text 48. Tadidam Bhagavan Rajan Eka Atmatmanham Svadrik Antaro Nantaro Bhati Pasyatam Haya Yorudha. Therefore, O King, you should look to the Supreme Lord only, who is one without a second, and who manifests himself by different energies and is both within and without. Purport. The Supreme Lord, Personality of Godhead, is one without a second, but he manifests himself by different energies because he is by nature blissful. The living beings are also manifestations of his marginal energy, qualitatively one with the Lord, and therefore there are innumerable living beings both within and without the external and internal energies of the Lord. Since the spiritual world is a manifestation of the Lord's internal energy, the living beings within that internal potency are qualitatively one with the Lord without contamination from the external potency. Although qualitatively one with the Lord, the living being, due to contamination of the material world, is pervertedly manifested, and therefore he experiences so-called happiness and distress in the material world. Such experiences are all ephemeral and do not affect the spirit soul. The perception of such ephemeral happiness and distress is due only to the forgetfulness of his qualities, which are equal to the Lord's. There is, however, a regular current from the Lord himself, from within and without, by which to rectify the fallen condition of the living being. From within he corrects the desiring living beings as localized Paramatma, and from without he corrects his manifestations, the spiritual master, and the revealed scriptures. And from without he corrects, by his manifestations, the spiritual master and the revealed scriptures. One should look unto the Lord. One should not be disturbed by the so-called manifestations of happiness or distress, but he should try to cooperate with the Lord in his outward activities for correcting the fallen souls. By his order only, one should become a spiritual master and cooperate with the Lord. One should not become a spiritual master for one's personal benefit, for some material gain, or as an avenue of business or occupation for earning livelihood. Bona fide spiritual masters who look unto the Supreme Lord to cooperate with him are actually qualitatively one with the Lord, and the forgetful ones are perverted reflections only. Yudhisthira Maharaj is advised by Narada, therefore, not to be disturbed by the affairs of so-called happiness and distress, but to look only unto the Lord, to execute the mission for which the Lord has descended. That was his prime duty. Text 49. Soyam Adya Maharaja Bhagavan Bhuta Bhavanam Kalarupo Vatirno Sham Abhavaya Suradvisham. That Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, in the guise of all devouring time, Kala Rupa, has now descended to earth to eliminate the envious from the world. Purport. There are two classes of human beings, namely the envious and the obedient. Since the Supreme Lord is one and the Father of all living beings, the envious living beings are also his sons, but they are known as asuras. But the living beings who are obedient to the Supreme Father are called devatas, or demigods, because they are not contaminated by the material conception of life. Not only are the asuras envious of the Lord, and even denying the existence of the Lord, but they are also envious of all other living beings. The predominance of asuras in the world is occasionally rectified by the Lord when he eliminates them from the world, and establishes a rule of devatas, like the Pandavas. His designation as Kala is, in disguise, is significant. He is not at all dangerous, but he is the transcendental form of eternity, knowledge, and bliss. For the devotees, his factual form is disclosed, and for the non-devotees he appears like Kala Rupa, which is a causal form. This, this causal form of the Lord is not at all pleasing to the Asuras, and therefore they think of the Lord as formless in order to feel secure that they will not be vanquished by the Lord. Text 50. Nishpaditam devakrityam avesham avashesham pratikshate tavadyuyam avikshadvam bhavedyavad iheshvara. The Lord has already performed his duties to help the demigods, and he is awaiting the rest. You Pandavas may wait as long as the Lord is here on earth. Purport. The Lord descends from his abode, Krishna Loka, the topmost planet in the spiritual sky, in order to help the demigod administrators of this material world when they are greatly vexed by the Asuras, who are envious not only of the Lord but also of his devotees. As referred to above, the conditioned living beings contact material association by their own choice, dictated by a strong desire to lord it over the resources of the material world and become imitation lords of all they survey. Everyone is trying to become an imitation god. There is keen competition amongst such imitation gods, and such competitors are generally known as asuras. When there are too many asuras in the world, then it becomes a hell for those who are pure devotees of the Lord. Due to the growth of the asuras, the mass of people who are generally devoted to the Lord by nature and the pure devotees of the Lord, including the demigods and higher planets, pray to the Lord for relief, and the Lord either descends personally from his abode or deputes some of his devotees to remodel the fallen condition of human society, or even animal society. Such disruptions take place not only in human society, but also among animals, birds, or other living beings, including the demigods and the higher planets. Lord Shri Krishna descended personally to vanquish asuras like Kamsa, Jarasandha, and Sishupal during the reign of Maharaj Yudhisthira. Almost all these asuras were killed by the Lord. Now he was awaiting the annihilation of his own dynasty called the Yadu Vamsa, who appeared by his will in this world. He wanted to take them away before his own departure to his eternal abode. Narada, like Vidura, did not disclose the imminent annihilation of the Yadu dynasty, but indirectly gave a hint to the king and his brothers to wait till the incident happened, and the Lord departed. 51. Text 51. Dhṛtarāṣṭra sahabratra Gandharya cha svabharyaya Dakshinena himavata Rishnam ashramam gataha. O king, your uncle Dhṛtarāṣṭra, his brother Vidura, and his wife Gandhari have gone to the southern side of the Himalaya mountains, where there are shelters of the great sages. To pacify the mourning Maharaj Yudhisthira, this is the purport. To pacify the mourning Maharaj Yudhisthira, Narada first of all spoke from the philosophical point of view, and then he began to describe the future movements of his uncle, which he could see by his foreseeing powers, and thus he began to describe as follows. Text 52. Shrotobi saptabhir yavai svardhuni saptadhavyadhat saptanam pritaye nana shapta shrota prachakshate. The place is called Saptashrota, divided by 7, because there the waters of the sacred Ganges are divided into 7 branches. This was done for the satisfaction of the 7 great rishis. Text 53. Snadvanu svavanam tasmin hudva kagnin yatha vidhi abhaksha upashantatma shaste vigata shainaha. On the banks of Saptashrota, Dhṛtarāṣṭra is now engaged in beginning Ashtanga Yoga by bathing 3 times daily in the morning, noon, and evening, by performing the Agnihotra sacrifice with fire, and by drinking only water. This helps one control the mind and the senses and frees one completely from the thoughts of familial affection. Purport: the yoga system is a mechanical way to control the senses and the mind and divert them from matter to spirit. The preliminary processes are the sitting posture, meditation, spiritual thoughts, manipulation of air passing within the body, and gradual situation in trance, facing the absolute person, Paramatma. Such mechanical ways of rising to the spiritual platform prescribe some regulative principles of taking bath daily 3 times, fasting as far as possible, sitting and concentrating the mind on the spiritual matters, and thus gradually becoming free from vishaya, or material objectives. Material existence means to be absorbed in the material objective, which is simply illusory. House, country, family, society, children, property, and business are some of the material coverings of the spirit, Atma, and the yoga system helps one to become free from all these illusory thoughts and gradually turn towards the absolute person, Paramatma. By material association and education, we learn simply to concentrate on flimsy things, but yoga is the process of forgetting them altogether. Modern so-called yogis and yoga systems manifest some magical feats, and ignorant persons are attracted by such false things, or they accept the yoga system as a cheap healing process for diseases of the gross body. But factually, the yoga system is the process of learning to forget what we have acquired throughout the struggle for existence. Dhṛtarāṣṭra was all along engaged in improving family affairs by raising the standard of living of his sons, or by usurping the property of the Pandavas for the sake of his own sons. These are common affairs for a man grossly materialistic and without knowledge of the spiritual force. He does not see how this can drag one from heaven to hell. By the grace of his younger brother, Vidura, Dhṛtarāṣṭra was enlightened and could see his grossly illusory engagements, and by such enlightenment he was able to leave home for spiritual realization. Śrīmad Dev was just foretelling the way of his spiritual progress in a place which was sanctified by the flow of the celestial Ganges. Drinking water only, without solid food, is also considered fasting. This is necessary for advancement of spiritual knowledge. A foolish man wants to be a cheap yogi without observing the regulative principles. A man who has no control over the tongue at first can hardly become a yogi. Yogi and bhogi are 2 opposite terms. The bhogi, or the merry man who eats and drinks, cannot be a yogi, for a yogi is never allowed to eat and drink unrestrictedly. We may note with profit how Dhṛtarāṣṭra began his yoga system by drinking water only and sitting calmly in a place with spiritual atmosphere, deeply absorbed in the thoughts of Lord Hari, the personality of Godhead. Text 54. Jita shano jita svasa pratyahrita sad indriya hari bhavana yadvasta raja sattva tamo mala. One who has controlled the sitting postures, the yogic asanas, and the breathing process can turn the senses toward the absolute personality of Godhead, and thus become immune to the contaminations of the modes of material nature, namely mundane goodness, passion, and ignorance. Purport: the preliminary activities of the way of yoga are asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dhyana, dharana, etc. Maharaj Dhṛtarāṣṭra was to attain success in those preliminary actions because he was seated in a sanctified place and was concentrating upon one objective, namely the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari. Thus all his senses were being engaged in the service of the Lord. This process directly helps the devotee to get freedom from the contaminations of the 3 modes of material nature. Even the highest mode, the material of goodness, is also a cause of material bondage. And what to speak of the other qualities, namely passion and ignorance. Passion and ignorance increase the material propensities of hankering for material enjoyment, and a strong sense of lust provokes the accumulation of wealth and power. One who has conquered these 2 base mentalities and has raised himself to the platform of goodness, which is full of knowledge and morality, cannot also control the senses, namely the eyes, the tongue, the nose, the ear, and touch. But one who has surrendered himself unto the lotus feet of Lord Hari, as above mentioned, can transcend all influences of the modes of material nature and be fixed in the service of the Lord. The Bhakti Yoga process, therefore, directly applies the senses to the loving service of the Lord. This prohibits the performer from engaging in material activities. This process of turning the senses from material attachment to the loving transcendental service of the Lord is called pratyahara, and the very process is called pranayama, ultimately ending in samadhi, or absorption in the pleasing of the Supreme Lord Hari by all means. Okay, thus ends our reading for today. We will continue from text 55 on Friday, hopefully. All glories to Srila Bhakti Niskam Shanta Maharaj Ki Jai. All glories to Srila Bhakti Vigyan Muni Maharaj Ki Jai. All glories to Sripad Bhakti Madhava Puri Maharaj Ki Jai. All glories to Srila Bhakti Nirmal Acharya Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. All glories to Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. All glories to Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. All glories to Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. All glories to Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ki Jai. All glories to our Rupa Nuga Guru Varga Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the worldwide devotees. Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to Navadvip Dham Ki Jai. Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Nrshingapuli Dham Ki Jai. Ekachakra Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Ju Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Giri Govardhan Gupta Govardhan Dham Ki Jai. Sham Kund Radha Kund Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi Vrinda Devi Ki Jai. Nitai Gora Pramanandi Hari 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 Bol. Dandavat Pranam.